This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so essentially, the objective of this pull request is basically to create a new SAI switch attribute, which will get the current temperature. We know that already there is a max temperature attribute that is there. So assuming that an ASIC has n sensors, the previously present max temperature attribute will retrieve the maximum of n sensors. But there was actually a need to also get the average of all the n sensors. So that is the reason for this pull request. So one of the motivations behind this is that sometimes the maximum value may be an outlier value, and we have seen instances in the past where the maximum value may not be reflective. There have been erratas, not necessarily within switches that are supported by SAI, but based on experience, there have been issues where the maximum temperature could go wrong because of a faulty diode. So getting the average temperature may also be useful, so that we can compare the maximum and the average and find out and discard outlier values. So that is the objective of this pull request. I think Camel approved this, but it is not merged yet. So if there are any questions, we'll be ready to take it.
Yeah, sorry, this is Tushar from Broadcom. The name, why couldn't it be including the term average?
Yeah, I think that can be, that change can be incorporated. So if the community is okay with it, I'll change it to SAI switch average temperature. Would that be okay?
So maybe you could explain like what was the current, like we call it current. What was that trying to represent?
No, current. I mean, it's like the terminology is basically, what is it's like ideally, it's like the alternative is basically to dump all the n sensor values. Okay, so each ASIC may support a specific number of diodes. So the alternative is to get get a list of all the n values. So we already had this maximum. So I don't see any issue in calling it average, but the objective is essentially to get the average.
I see. Okay,
so
got it. Thank you.
It's a current average. Actually, it's a current average, and if you want to rename it as average, I think I'll make the change.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
I was thinking, so why not just get all of them? Is there a reason not to get all of them?
Yeah, may know who's was it Gohan or I didn't get. I think we can actually get all of them. There's no problem. Now, the thing is that then the max temp would be redundant. If you're okay with it, I think we'll just get all of them as a list. Would that be okay?
Yeah, but all of them may not be enough, because then you need to know which one.
Hello. 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 Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. I think we lose Tushar probably.
Oh, sorry. So go on. What I was saying was, like, if you get a list of just temperatures, won't you also like to know what corresponds to what in the system?
Yeah. But maybe that one. I was thinking if because every ASIC is different, so maybe he can refer to the to the ASIC spec to understand which one corresponds to which one, as long as the order is fixed.
I see. Okay, sure.
Okay, so the conclusion is that we will try to get all the n sensors as a list.
I think that's an additional ask. I think what you have currently makes it should be fine. Just calling it average temperature and max, I think, are a good start. Plus, I think an additional set of attributes to get a list.
Okay.
I think Gohan is asking.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. So we will have the existing max temp. I will rename the current temp as average temp, and I will also create a new
But
list attribute.
if you have if we define all of them, then we probably don't need the average for the maximum because we already it's already there, so we still want to keep it.
Okay.
But I don't. Do we need both? Is the average? I mean, let's decide to do the average, or we can just get all of them and then.
Okay. Then we'll retain the max temp, and I will replace this current temp with a list which will get all the diode readings. Would that be fine?
Well, I guess one could argue that you can always determine max from a set of values.
Yeah, right. Because it's for backward compatibility.
Yeah,
because,
exactly. So backward compatibility, and I think for simplicity, even this average temperature looks good to me. I mean, I don't care about a list of temperatures, for example. Then, I mean, no harm in having just additional information versus.
Okay, so Gohan, what do you think?
It's fine. I mean, we can get a average one and yeah. So yeah, it's fine. So we can add two. Yeah. So but one more thing, I think we probably also need to have attribute to get how many temperature sensors we have in the system. You know, like as a number, right? So list is it enough? I mean, usually we get like how many ports there, like how many numbers, the numbers of the temperatures, and we first get the number, and then allocate the area, and then we get the sensor, all the sensors, all the yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Right.
So
you know, yeah. So each temperature that would be a list. So, but you also want to know how many of them so that you can allocate the number.
Okay.
Allocate the space. Area,
Okay.
and you can do the query.
Okay, so we will get the we'll have an attribute for the number of sensors and another attribute which will be the list. Okay, and apart from that, do you want the average temperature or it can be it doesn't have to be?
I think yeah, two shots is it's for convenience. So we can keep it. I think. Yeah.
Okay, fine. We'll keep it. I'll add the number of temperatures and the list additionally and raise new pull request. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think we have concluded on this, so I'll update the pull request. Okay. Thank you. Over to you, Shin.
Who's the next?
I think Shodian just joined.
Yeah, hello.
Hey, 收听?
Yes, this is Shuqian. So I can discuss about the pull request.
So I think probably we can't hear you. It's
Can you hear me? Or can you guys hear my voice?
It's faint, I think. It's a little bit faint. Maybe you can put your mic a little bit closer.
Hello.
Yeah. Hello.
Is it better?
Hello.
Hello. Hello. Let me check if I can adjust my voice. Hello.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can talk about the pull request 879. So this change is about the mirror session attribute VLAN header valid attribute. So because the reason of changing this is to enable that for the ER span, the destination port maybe inside of VLAN, and then like after the IP change or after the routing change, the destination could be toggled between the VLAN and a layer 3 destination. So we want to change this from create only to create and set, so that this attribute, so that we can like lively change this attribute. If this attribute is set to true, then the extra VLAN header information is required. If otherwise it's set to false, then all the VLAN header attributes are just ignored. Any comments from anybody?
So you described the first change or the second change?
What do you mean by first change or second change?
Oh, sorry. I was looking at the diff, and there is a change in line 205. I wasn't sure which one was being discussed.
Oh, so both of them. So if I change the create only to create and set, then it's required for this attribute to not be mandatory on create, and the condition should be valid only. There's a requirement for such kind of attributes, which is create and set.
But for RSpan, VLAN is mandatory, right? So is that ensured with this change?
Yeah. So
Shulian, you didn't share anything. Can you share your screen?
I don't know if I can share it with my. Let me try. Yeah, I don't know. I cannot share my screen.
Do you want to send me your link to your pull request? I can share for you.
Yeah, that's 879.
879. Okay.
Yeah. So the first change is so for RSpan, which for RSpan the VLAN header is mandatory. So this is this can be done in a inside the SAI so that this can be checked. But let me. For example, if the VLAN header is not the VLAN header valid is not set, but the type is rspan, then I think maybe we can maybe the SAI implementation can complain about that and prevent user from doing this kind of things.
Okay, and what about like setting in case of rspan? So is that allowed with this change? So for rspan also, can we change the VLAN then?
Yeah, then it means that if
Or is it only create only with this?
for
You can set.
I can it cannot be create create only because from the right now the VLAN header valid is only used when the mirror session attribute is the VLAN session type is the ER span. I think we don't even consider about the R span right
No,
now.
because the
Yeah,
previous
I mean there is no
condition.
complex condition in the metadata, so we cannot basically do and or, so a complex relation. So I think what is written here, if it's a L2 remote, then the VLAN ID is valid, and then if it's a ER span, we first look at the VLAN valid header, which someone with ERSPAN can define it as true or can define it as false, and according to that flag, then the VLAN ID becomes valid. So the VLAN ID is always valid for remote L2, and it is valid for ERSPAN if the person defining the ERSPAN chooses to have a VLAN valid header.
Okay, and still.
Yeah, it
Okay,
is just that the metadata is not, can't really, explain this logic, so we have to shorten the logic, I guess.
Maybe can some description, like just to have this behavior commented, can we have some comments somewhere? Because
There is already a comment that doesn't change. If you look at actually at the top line, you will see it's valid for rspan or ERSPAN with valid VLAN header.
Yeah, that's
So,
in line 185.
Yeah, that is
yeah,
true,
so
but the mandatory on create has been removed, right? So, but for rspan, we want that, right?
yeah, for
For
rspan,
rspan, it's always valid even if we don't have it, right? According to ETI, right?
yeah. That's what, even written here in computer logic, or if it's remote, if it's rspan, it always becomes true, or if VLAN header is valid, and VLAN header is valid is only valid itself for ERSPAN. So it's either ERSPAN and VLAN header valid, or remote layer 2. And that stuff has not, there hasn't been a change in functionality or meaning. Basically, I think what Shotiana is doing here is only allowing to edit the attribute. There's no change in the functionality. So everything is the same as it worked before. We only allow now to set the value on runtime, which was not allowed before. Otherwise, there is no change.
Yeah.
I think I think there is change. So, for example, previously, when you set the type to be R-span, then you have to supply the VLAN ID attribute. If you don't supply the VLAN ID attribute, then the metadata checker will return you error saying you are missing a mandatory attribute of VLAN ID for the R-span in this case. Now I think if because we remove the mandatory on create and giving a default value, then in the R-span case you do not need to have a VLAN ID, but in this case the VLAN ID will be the default 0.
Yeah.
I guess,
yeah.
which may not make sense. In this case, then you have to set the VLAN ID correctly, and I think that's a difference. And the reason why the reason why it makes this change is because now we change the valid VLAN header to be created and set, meaning at the runtime we can change the VLAN header. We can flip the bit. However, if we flip the bit, we change the valid VLAN header from true to false. Then we have to ignore so we have to ignore the VLAN ID. So the VLAN ID is no longer mandatory. I think there is some metadata checking constraint to still keep the mandatory on create option.
Yeah.
But
if that is like somewhere like commented, just because if I just see that newly, if someone sees that newly, that mandatory might not be convenient. Yeah, if you explain that now, it's fine. But if there's some comment like this is needed for R-span, that would be good. If there's no change, that's fine.
Yeah, I can add a comment to make sure that R-span we need this. Otherwise, I don't know if for example, like for R-span, if the packet header has a VLAN ID which is 0, what could be the behavior?
Well, so technically speaking, even in the previous version, even you have this mandatory on create, if you give the VLAN ID 0, that is still allowed by the SAI metadata. So
Yes.
it's just that user have to give a value in before, but now he doesn't have to give a value. But if he doesn't give the value, then the metadata will use default value, which is 0.
Yeah.
But in before, he can also give a 0. We don't have. Yeah. It's not much of change.
Yeah, I could add some comment.
But there is a change in terms of behavior. But do we consider this to be backward compatible change?
I think so. If you add code that sets VLAN ID, it still will continue to work for R-span. So it's not that you are breaking existing code, no?
Yeah, that's
it's losing the constraint, so that should be backward compatible because in the previous version, people are always providing this value.
Yeah, the only thing that may break is if you have a negative test in the past, a synthetic test that when you checked for failure, now your test might break, but you know, it's just a test, it's not an application. So you don't see that we really break something.
Yes.
So in general, we should be fine for such changes in the side headers, right? So it sounds like because we're losing our constraints.
Yes.
Okay. So what's the conclusion? I just add a few comments on this one, and we're good.
Yeah, that should be fine, I guess. So if comments are added, like ensure that for our span it's the same. It should be good.
What comments do we need to add here?
No, just like for R span, this is mandatory, right? This attribute still needs to be given, right? A valid attribute. Or are we saying like 0? Like you need not even set this for R span. This attribute VLAN ID is not even necessary for R span. So when you create a R span session, VLAN ID attribute is not needed.
Right. So okay.
So valid is not needed, right? Not the ID. ID is needed, right?
Yeah, correct.
No,
that is what mandatory on create does. But create and set that is actually not needed.
I think is probably saying that we need to add a comment saying in terms of RSpec, if the VLAN ID is not provided, then the system will choose the default value 0. Is that something that we need to clarify? Or what do you need to clarify here?
No, but if VLAN 0 is created,
in the comments we say that the VLAN ID is used in case of RSpan or in case of ERSpan and VLAN header. It's already said in the existing comment. So
right now the
comment.
Yeah, I saw the comment already have. Yeah.
The comment is already existing because that's something that hasn't changed. And in SAI in general, if you don't give an attribute, you get the default. And I think it's pretty much already there.
Right. Okay. So then maybe we just need to change comment on the commit messages saying that
something like that.
Not in the header file, but in the commit messages saying, okay, there is a behavior change that previously when you create an RSpec session, the VLAN ID is a mandatory field. Now it's not a mandatory field, but
it's 0.
It will choose default 0, but you still need to supply the user is responsible to provide a valid ID for the VLAN.
So if the user does not provide that attribute, SAI could return error, right? So that is the behavior currently if that attribute is not given. So if the user does not give that attribute, still error would be returned because that attribute is needed for our span.
So we should, in the commit message, we should document this change.
Okay.
Right? So this behavior change from removing the mandatory. Right? Is that the things we need to add? Okay.
Yeah, that would
But
be
for the header file, I think it's okay, right? So.
Yeah, if sometime in the future, if we just look back and see somewhere if it's there, it should be fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Do we have any other topics?
I think that's it. We have these two pull requests.
As in, like, there are some pending pull requests like that have been discussed, which have not been merged. So if there is any conclusion on them, that would be good. One is if we have time. Okay. So one of the pull requests which is pending for some time is the bridge ID riff. Can I share my screen?
Yeah, let me see. Is that Kartik?
Yes.
Okay.
You can share now.
Yeah. This one is actually adding the attribute bridge ID for router interface type bridge. I think we had discussed this one, and I see comments like seems everyone is fine. I just want to know if this could be merged. This is adding an attribute for bridge ref, the router interface attribute bridge ID in the router interface create. So we had discussed this earlier, and I
Right.
see
So,
like
is there something that Ihai is going to double check this with Mallox? Is there something that I sort of?
Itali has put a comments like this is fine with Mallox. So.
Oh, okay. Okay. Then I think yeah. Then we should be able to merge.
Okay.
Let me. Okay. Oh, yeah. So, yeah. Let me. I'll merge this one. Yeah.
Okay. And one more was the bridge type. This was also actually like we wanted to have match ACLs on bridge bind point and things like that. So that pull request is also actually pending. So this one is for having bridge ID as a ACL as a match criteria. So this was also discussed, but for some reason, yeah, this is still a bit open.
What is
So we added a bridge bind point for ACL, similar to VLAN bind point. This one.
what was the discussion results for this one? Is everybody okay with that one?
Yeah, seemed everyone was okay. So, so we added. So currently we have VLAN bind point, right? Similarly, bridge bind point. and we wanted to have bridge ID as a match criteria. So this was discussed.
Which is this 846?
Yes, 846.
Oh, that was a match field, right?
Yes, match field and also the bridge ID bind point. So we had discussed this, and the community wanted to have a new bridge bind point as well, for just like VLAN bind point. So for bridges also a bind point for matching ACLs on the bridge. So that was introduced in that.
Okay. Let me see. Is it this is I mean the commit message doesn't indicate they're adding a binding type.
Okay. Actually, we had so initially binding point was not there. Based on the community discussions, we added a pull this as well. So one commit message.
Oh right. So then can you update the commit message? Because when we look back, I think it's we need to so
okay, sure.
Is there any concern on this? Is this? I don't see other folks approve this other than Dale.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I think we are fine with it. I mean, we said back then that I think we were fine with it, so I can approve.
That's all I had.
Okay, anything else? If no, we are going to return 15 minutes back to everyone. Yeah, thanks for your time.
Thanks.
Bye.